Hi, and welcome to another special as a part of our end of season for the Gooner Ramble. Today we have Henry Windsor with us, and we focus on the English Arsenal players that are going to the Euros and that are not going to the Euros. And we also touch on other Arsenal players who will be at the Euros and get Henry's thoughts on what he thinks that will happen. Hi, we have Henry Windsor here from the Times. Hello, Henry.
Hi there.
Thanks for your time. I want to touch on the England squad and certainly the Arsenal players in that. So we've got Jack Wilshere. Start of the season, we expected a lot more. I mean, firstly, just to focus on Jack. I mean, were you in the camp that wanted him in the squad, or were you one of those who thought, well, he's not match fit, he shouldn't be in there?
He has to be in the squad. England have very few truly creative passing central midfielders. And Dele Alli obviously has come through, but he hasn't got Jack's range of passing. And Hodgson looks at players who've delivered for him in qualifying, and obviously Jack with those 2 goals last summer, and he was terrific. I mean, I think you have to make allowances for certain players, but there are things that Wilshere has to learn about. I mean, we always have the same conversation with Wilshere when he turns up at international duty, and he says, "Well, I want to learn and improve, and I've been unfortunate with injuries." But the kid's the same age as Mario Götze, who scored the winning goal in a World Cup final. So time is beginning to ebb a little bit for Wilshere. So he's been unfortunate with injuries. I thought McNair got off lightly in the media in terms of the criticism for the challenge. I thought it was a poor challenge. Oh. But the problem, this is a general problem with Arsenal, is that a lot of, particularly the young English players, don't necessarily train or don't necessarily develop. And Wilshere needs development. This is something that he's going to have to work on, as well as the club coaches, is the way he runs with the ball can invite challenges and invites injuries. And he's got to look at Gaza, and he's got to talk to Paul Scholes. I know he's had some contact with Scholes, a little bit about how you can avoid injury. I'm not saying that Gaza is the greatest role model off the field, but yeah, there are things that Jack can learn from on it. So Bush is very much a work in progress, but he definitely deserves to go. But it has to be taken into the general context that England aren't overly blessed with players.
Yeah. Do you think he'll start? He'll start in most of the group games, certainly the first one.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, all the impression we get from Hodgson's intentions for the first game against Russia and Marseille is that he goes for it. He wants to put a marker down, he doesn't really want to be going into the second game against Wales slightly nervously at the Gareth Bale breakaway. So I think he'll go for it. Russia have got a slightly ageing defence. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it'd be interesting to see whether he starts. I mean, he really likes Dyer, and I think when you look at England's, particularly the central defence, we need about 7 holding players, defensive players in front of them to protect them. But I imagine Dyer will start. You could play Wilshere alongside. But Wilshere's got to go and prove his fitness now. He can't pick up any more niggles. He just need, it was good that he played a lot the other day, but he's got a lot to prove still.
Yeah, I thought when he came on against Man City, actually, he obviously came on because of an injury to Welbeck, who we'll touch on as well. But he looked different class. He did not look like he had been out for the best part of a year. He really, I think that was the day probably Hodgson decided. Well, I think he decided anyway, but I think that was the confirmation he needed. That we need Jack Wilshere, and I'm a firm believer in that as well. I think his passing is second to none, and something we haven't got. Talking about Welbeck, how big of a blow is Danny Welbeck? And I'm a firm believer that he would have started pretty much every game for Hodgson. I mean, what's your view on Welbeck?
Well, he offers a range of possibilities. He can play up top, he can play wide, as we've seen with England in the past. He's got a good goal-scoring record with England. He's incredibly popular, Danny Welbeck. You have to remember this. And Hodgson's big on what he calls the good citizens, good tourists going away. It's one of the reasons why, everyone was going on about one absentee in particular, but it was obvious he was never going to be in the squad because he's not a good tourist, as they say. But in terms of Welbeck is so popular, and it's, everyone says, well, it's a blow for Arsenal, it's a blow for England, but, let's get down to the real issue. It's a huge blow for Danny Welbeck. Poor kid, he's sitting there. He was going to go and have probably a good tournament with England. England will get out of the group. Then they possibly get to the round of 16, probably, maybe get to a quarter final. And, that would have been a great summer for Welbeck, who loves playing for England. So, I mean, my feelings first and foremost for Danny Welbeck, who I promise you, I'm sure you met him, but he's one of the nicest, funniest, grounded, humble guys in the game. And you saw when he came back with Arsenal, left the game, and after that, how important he was. But there are issues with Danny Welbeck and his body, whether it's something that Arsenal have looked at, but certainly it was an issue with anyone who was any connection with Manchester United. There's certain issues, and it seems I'm a total layman, with the alignment of his body, and that's something the club have got to look at. And Arsenal's medical department, I'm sure, they're good people there, and they'll keep an eye on that, because you don't want repetitions of this.
Yeah. Have you heard much from Welbeck or his camp since his injury? I mean, how's he doing? He'll obviously be very, very disappointed, but have you heard anything?
What everyone knows about Danny Welbeck is he's a pretty sanguine guy, so he'll just get on with it and getting fit for it's a long layoff. It is just brutal, but he's strong, and if you're a top competitive sports man or woman, you do have to acquire a certain mental resilience to get to the top, and so he'll just sort of focus on that and work week by week, month by month. Fraser Forster had that. He had that terrible injury, and he did it week by week, month by month. But there are one or two people I know who sort of work with one or two of the Arsenal players privately and professional players privately on their fitness. Right. And maybe Welbeck will go and spend some time with this one individual in particular who's London-based, and eventually long-term work with him, because whatever profession you're in, you want to improve. And if there are people around, maybe not necessarily paid for by your employer, that you can go and get advice from. I mean, I'm a journalist, and I'll go and pick the brains of Brian Glanville, and we're not on the same payroll. It's a very straightforward thing to do, and younger players have got to start doing this more and more. And it's interesting, there's a group of young players in London who are turning to one fitness trainer in particular, who I know is a really interesting character. Right. And, he works with Danny Rose and Yannick Bolasie and people like that, just to work on their pace and their fitness, and more players need to do that.
Yeah. Theo Walcott obviously wasn't in the squad. I don't think it was a big surprise to many.
No surprise. It would have been a huge shock if he'd been in the squad.
Yeah, but I mean, Hodgson has picked him quite regularly.
The game's changed. There are other players out there. Sterling's come through. Yeah. Obviously, Welbeck was injured. Townsend had a better end to the season. And Theo Walcott's just one of the nicest guys you can meet. Yeah, but he's got to address his career and train on.
Yeah. What do you think will happen in his career now? Because he's really at crossroads, isn't he? With his age, with his club form, club appearances, and certainly being left out again for England.
He's been at Arsenal 10 years. I mean, there've been issues with injuries, and there's sympathy for him with that. But again, like with Ox and Wilshere to an extent, something Calum Chambers. I don't know what happens at Arsenal, but some of the English players aren't really training on. They're not being pushed enough to take responsibility for their careers. Look, like the Ox, Theo is just a really nice kid. But, sometimes you need a little bit of devil in you.
Yeah. Do you think he'll stay at Arsenal this summer, or do you think he might push for a move?
I don't know whether he'll push for a move. I mean, will he get a better club than Arsenal?
True. I think Welbeck's injury as well, Arsenal probably will.
Yeah, that's true.
More like to give him. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, if he was fit and playing for Arsenal, do you think he would have made the squad?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ox, a fully motivated. So someone at the club said to me that they felt that he was too middle class. I mean, that's an interesting sort of debate in itself. But I think what they meant by that is that he's just a really nice guy. When you meet, I mean, I've interviewed Ox 2 or 3 times, one-on-one. Yeah. And he's just, he turns up early, he smiles, he's polite, he looks in the eye, he shakes your hand. Yeah. He's got good manners. Yeah. And but I mean, I've said this to him, and I know enough people have said this to him. You look where his dad, Mark, came from. You think what his dad had to go through in terms of the racist abuse at the time, in terms of the, the rivals in that position at the time, when sort of, the likes of, I know Mark played on the left, but, he had John Barnes on. So Mark played on the right, but John Barnes was on the left. There were some really outstanding wingers around that time. So Mark really sort of, he came from not the easiest background, and he fought his way up. Whereas Ox has had actually, quite a nice, smooth, comfortable upbringing. And it comes back to that, does he have the devil in him? And I just hope that Ox I think he's at more of a crossroads than any of those Arsenal young English
players
at Arsenal.
Young.
He is, look, but he's and he's very, very bright. And I just hope he looks at it and thinks, actually, I could just do so much. Don't drift for sort of 3 or 4 years. Seize the moment now. There is an energetic generation coming through.
Yeah.
Particularly the Spurs players like Harry Kane and Dele Alli. These are driven kids. And Ox, if he wants to surf that English wave, has really got to sort of focus on that now. Obviously, there are issues with injuries, but you see Ox, Guardiola's a fan of his. Ox can play central midfield, he can play wide. We've seen him score in Maracana. There's a terrific technical player in there. He's got the athleticism. He's just got to sort the injuries out and then just, get that hunger going again.
It does seem like Arsene Wenger believes in him. He started against Barcelona at home, of course. He got injured, but I think that was a huge confidence booster for him to kind of start in one of the biggest games for Arsenal this season.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. He's played against Bayern, and I think it was against Bayern. He had good games. He can raise himself to the big occasion, but he's got a scrap. You look at Thomas Muller.
Yeah,
Thomas Muller can play. Essentially, he can play wide. He delivers in the big game. He's got the hunger. Ox should be looking at individuals like that. It's a slightly different position,
of course. Yeah.
But he can. It's all there for Ox if he sorts his body out, and as I say, we choose his hunger. Yeah,
another player with fitness issues that needs to be addressed. Kieran Gibbs obviously hasn't played much, and I think with the form of Rose and Bertrand and even Baines came back, we weren't sure of obviously would next season want to be back in the England fold. Where is Kieran Gibbs in his career as well? He's been overtaken by Nacho Monreal. He actually played against Spurs and played quite well, so there's still a player. But where does he go?
He's drifting. Again, he's another one of these young Arsenal English players who's drifting, and Cresswell's ahead of him in the pecking order. Quite rightly, Cresswell's been one of the left backs of the season. Yeah. So, again, he's another one. He's another really nice kid. Yeah. He's another one who you just. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 English left backs at the moment. I'm not completely convinced by that, and clearly Arsene Wenger, whose judgment counts most, he's putting Nacho Monreal in ahead of him.
Yeah, and lastly, Calum Chambers. Obviously he was never going to be in the squad here, but he's one who hasn't really played much. Does he need a loan? Does he need what does Calum Chambers need? Because I think there's a real player in Calum Chambers, by the way. I remember when he first came and he played centre back, and I think we had Besiktas away, or it was one of those really hostile games away from home, and he was fantastic.
There was always a concern with Calum Chambers when I played right back in the Community Shield, and Dzeko did him for pace out wide, and Dzeko City at the time, was not necessarily quick here. And I think that was a concern in terms of the way he came through at Southampton and the fanfare. And it's a decent money. It was 60 million quid when he arrived at Arsenal. There's clearly a very good player there. Again, another really nice, polite young Arsenal English kid whose career has been blighted by injuries and seems to be drifting a bit.
Yeah.
I think at first, Wenger's got to decide what he thinks he is, whether he's right back, whether he's centre half or holding midfielder, and then just let him play in those positions and just give him a chance. And maybe, probably Arsenal won't appreciate being told to take advice from Tottenham, but they can look at how Eric Dyer has developed centre half, right back, now making his way as a holding midfielder, but just playing week in, week out. And what Chambers needs is a run of games in a position that which the club and he thinks that he's best suited to and allowed to develop.
Yeah. Okay, and lastly, from all the Arsenal players playing in the Euros, who do you think will have the best tournament? So you'll have Giroud, Ozil, Wilshere, Ramsey, they'll all be there. Probably Czech, Siki, a few of them that are going to be there. Who do you think could have a really good tournament, and that could maybe just change their even club career a bit?
Well, I think Arsenal's best 3 players of the season have probably been Czech, Bellerin and Ozil. And because Ozil plays for Germany, you can see him having a prominent Euros. Not that necessarily helps the club, as he's still playing. I believe it's July the 10th. but I mean, for me, the best equipped team out there, when you look at the strength of spine they've got, even without Benzema, is France. So Giroud, I'm not a huge fan of, despite everyone going crazy over the fact he scored a hat-trick against a relegated team on the last day of the season, but it didn't count for much. I can see, Giroud probably featuring for France, and you can see France because of their history on home soil in tournaments, and the fact they've got Pogba, good goalkeeper as well. You can see them, Griezmann, players like that. You can see them having a strong tournament at home. So I would thought there'll be an interesting first training session back at Colney with Ozil and Giroud looking at each other and just assessing who went furthest.
Yeah. Obviously, Laurent Koscielny will probably play a lot with Sacco out as well. He's kind of going to be first choice for things. I mean, ironic you say about the three best players. The Arsenal sort of player of the year thing was out in the last couple of days, and Ozil today was announced as the winner with Alexis Sanchez number 2. I'm not sure where that's come from.
That's bizarre. I did my team of the tournament, and the team of the Premier League, and Bellerin was the only Arsenal player who got close. I mean, look, Ozil's been terrific, but James Milner's had more assists since Christmas. Look, I'm a huge Ozil fan. I think he's one of those players that maybe the media don't fully appreciate, but you talk to players and coaches, and they absolutely rave about him. I also think he's the type of player who needs pace around him. Like when Walcott's fit and he can play those balls through, because I don't think there are probably only 3 or 4 other players in Europe who play as accurate passes, weighted passes. And I mean, I interviewed him earlier in the season, and it was quite interesting just talking about his athleticism and pace, because there was one, I can't remember which goal it was, but he was sort of deep in his own half, and then suddenly appeared sort of 50 yards up the pitch to play a square pass, I think to Ramsey to score. And it was, you just thinking, wow, how did he get
Villa.
there?
It was Aston Villa away, I think it was,
Right, there you go. And it was, and I just thought, wow, look at the pace.
Yeah, he's quick.
On him. I mean, he is quick. Look, he's not a sort of flyer like Bellerin or whatever, but I mean, wow, he's got that athleticism to his game. I don't know, 1 or 2 people in the media sort of, question him. Does he do it in the big game? Does he really impose himself? And there were certainly questions when he left Germany. All the German journalists were saying, well, we don't think he's got the sort of strength of character to play for Bayern Munich. But I think he's just one of those players, you have to appreciate it. Yeah. And look, you can't argue with the numbers. I'm not a huge fan of stats, but how many assists he got this season? 18 or so?
I think it was
17, 18. So I mean, he was a creator. He could probably score a few more goals, but then.
Yeah. I mean,
the player's got to be encouraged to shoot.
Yeah, you say Milner's got more assists, which he has, but I mean, I think
since Christmas,
I think Ozil got only about 3 or 4, but he's created the most amount of chances anywhere in Europe. I think so. He's still.
I think Ozil's a special player. I mean, I definitely have. If I would say Bellerin was comfortably Arsenal's player of the season. If you look at sort of impact, but I think Ozil's been terrific, and Czech's been excellent as well, and in a team which is fairly bereft of leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought Czech's been even more important because he's a presence. Arsenal lack winners, and that's an old debate. But Czech obviously has got that resilience, that gladiator spirit, as well as being a very sort of popular guy, and that's an important impact in the dressing. But those 3 have been. Arsenal players.
I think Nacho Monreal has been very good as well, and I appreciate you don't see Arsenal every week, but Monreal has been very consistent as well. Just finally, how far will England get in the Euros, and who do you think will win the Euros?
I mean, I'm fairly sanguine on this. I've seen England's last 250 games.
Yeah, I remember saying.
And it's in that time, I've probably seen England play really well 5 times, and very rarely in tournaments, probably not since Holland at Euro 96.
Wow.
So how will England do? I think they'll get through the group stage, probably win the group stage, get through the round of 16, and then, as always with England, when they meet a team who retain possession, like Italy, when they meet a team who can take penalties, like Germany, Portugal, England tend to bow out. So I think if England get to the semi-final, Hodgson stays on, and there'll be street parties. If England bow out in the quarter-finals, I don't think there will be huge surprise. We've got some terrific attackers. We've got some decent midfielders. We've got the worst collection of defenders in my lifetime, and I'm 53. But we've got a very good goalkeeper.
For 53, Henry. You look good for 53.
Aging nicely. So, I mean, I'm quarter final. Okay. Semi-final. Hooray.
Yeah. And who will win it?
France.
Cool.
But my predictions are terrible, so get your money on Germany.
yeah. Well, I'm going to put a tenner on Giroud, being top goal scorer now, and I'm going to invoice.
Well, France won the World Cup in '98 without a centre forward. I mean, Divac was floating around, but anything's possible with them.
Yeah, I think maybe Martial could certainly bang in with a few goals, but we'll see. All right, Henry, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Akhil.
Enjoy the Euros.
Pleasure. Enjoy the summer. See you next season.
Thank you very much. See you next season. Cheers.
Take care, Akhil.
All right.